Walter John de la Mare OM CH was an English poet, short story writer and novelist. He is probably best remembered for his works for children, for his poem, The Listeners, and for a small selection of subtle psychological horror stories, amongst them Seaton's Aunt and Out of the Deep. His 1921 novel Memoirs of a Midget won the James Tait Black Memorial Prize for Fiction, and his post-war collected stories for children won the 1947 Carnegie Medal for British children's books. Life. De la Mare was born in Kent at 83 Marion Road, Charlton, partly descended from a family of French Huguenots, and was educated at St. Paul's Cathedral School. He was born to James Edward de la Mare, a principal at the Bank of England, and Lucy Sophia Browning, daughter of Scottish naval surgeon and author Dr. Colin Arrett Browning. The suggestion that Lucy was related to poet Robert Browning has been found to be incorrect. He had two brothers, Francis Arthur Edward and James Herbert, and four sisters, Florence Mary, Constance Eliza, Ethel, and Ada Mary. De la Mare preferred to be known as Jack by his family and friends as he disliked the name Walter. He worked from 1890 in the statistics department of the London office of Standard Oil for 18 years to support his family, but nevertheless found time to write. In 1908, through the efforts of Sir Henry Newbolt, he received a civil list pension which enabled him to concentrate on writing. In 1892, de la Mare joined the Esperanza Amateur Dramatics Club, where he met and fell in love with Elfrida Ingpen, the leading lady, who was 10 years older than he. They were married on the 4th of August 1899 and they went on to have 4 children, Richard Herbert Ingpen, Colin, Florence and Lucy Elfrida de la Mare. The new family lived in Beckenham and Annerley from 1899 till 1924. It was in Beckenham at Mackenzie Road that the children were born. His first book of poems, Songs of Childhood, published, and Henry Brocken written. The house at Annerley in South London was the scene of many parties, notable for imaginative games of charades. In 1940, his wife Elfrida was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and spent the rest of her life as an invalid, eventually dying in 1943. From 1940 until his death, de la Mare lived in Southend House, Montpellier Row, Twickenham, the same street on which Alfred, Lord Tennyson, had lived a century earlier. For the collected stories for children, he won the annual Carnegie Medal from the Library Association, recognizing the year's best children's book by a British subject. It was the first collection to win the award. De la Mare suffered from a coronary thrombosis in 1947 and died of another in 1956. He spent his final year mostly bedridden, being cared for by a nurse whom he loved but never had a physical relationship with. His ashes are buried in the crypt of St. Paul's Cathedral, where he had once been a choir boy. The imagination. De la Mare described 2 distinct types of imagination, although aspects might be a better term, the childlike and the boylike. It was at the border between the two that Shakespeare, Dante, and the rest of the great poets lay. De la Mare claimed that all children fall into the category of having a childlike imagination at first, which is usually replaced at some point in their lives. He explained in the lecture, Rupert Brooke and the Intellectual Imagination, that children are not bound in by the groping senses. Facts to them are the liveliest of chameleons. They are contemplatives, solitaries, fakirs, who sink again and again out of the noise and fever of existence and into a waking vision. His biographer Doris Ross McCrossan summarizes this passage: children are, in short, visionaries. Quote, "This visionary view of life can be seen as either vital creativity and ingenuity, or fatal disconnection from reality. The increasing intrusions of the external world upon the mind, however, frighten the childlike imagination, which retires like a shocked snail into its shell. For then onward the boyish imagination flourishes, the intellectual analytical type. By adulthood, the childlike imagination has either retreated forever or grown bold enough to face the real world. Thus emerge the two extremes of the spectrum of adult minds. The mind molded by the boy-like is logical and deductive. That shaped by the childlike becomes intuitive, inductive. For de la Mare, the one knows that beauty is truth, the other reveals that truth is beauty. Yet another way he puts it is that the visionary's source of poetry is within, while the intellectual sources are without, external, in action, knowledge of things, and experience. De la Mare hastens to add that this does not make the intellectual's poetry any less good, but it is clear where his own preference lies. Come Hither. Come Hither was an anthology, edited by de la Mare, mostly of poetry with some prose. It has a frame story, and can be read on several levels. It was first published in 1923, and was a success. Further editions followed. Alongside children's literature it includes a selection of the leading Georgian poets. Supernaturalism. De la Mare was also a sporadic writer of ghost stories. His collections Eight Tales, The Riddle and Other Stories, The Connoisseur and Other Stories, On the Edge and The Wind Blows Over all contain a few ghost stories each. His complete short stories have now been published in 3 volumes issued by Giles de la Mare Publishers, London. De la Mare also wrote 2 supernatural novels, Henry Brocken and The Return. His poem The Ghost Chase appeared in Punch magazine, the 26th of March 1941, and was illustrated by Roland Emmett. De la Mare's supernatural writings were a favorite of H.P. Lovecraft, who in his classic study Supernatural Horror in Literature noted that de la Mare's supernatural horror fiction features a keen potency which only a rare master can achieve, especially praising de la Mare's novel The Return and his stories Seaton's Aunt, The Tree, Out of the Deep, Mr. Kemp, A Recluse, and All Hallows. On the shortage of de la Mare horror stories, Lovecraft wrote, De la Mare can be exceedingly powerful when he chooses, and I only wish it choose oftener. Gary William Crawford has described de la Mare's supernatural fiction for adults as being among the finest to appear in the first half of this century, whilst again noting the disparity between the high quality and low quantity of de la Mare's adult ghost stories. Boucher and McCarmas, however, dismissed his 1949 collected tales, saying that we freely admit we find Mr. de la Mare's self-consciously subtle wordiness unreadable. Several later writers of supernatural fiction, including Robert Eichmann, Ramsey Campbell, David A. McEntee and Reggie Oliver, have cited de la Mare's small output of ghostly fiction as highly inspirational. The horror scholar S.T. Joshi has said that de la Mare's supernatural fiction should always have an audience that will shudder apprehensively at its horror and be moved to somber reflection by its pensive philosophy. For children, de la Mare wrote the fairy tale The Three Muller Mulgars, praised by the literary historian Julia Briggs as a neglected masterpiece, and by the critic Brian Stableford as a classic animal fantasy. Writer Joan Aiken cited some of his short stories, such as The Almond Tree and Sambo and the Snow Mountains, for the sometimes unexplained quality, which she also employed in her own novels. Henry Brocken. The Three Muller Mulgars, also published as The Three Royal Monkeys. The Return. Memoirs of a Midget, Mr. Bumps and His Monkey. Short story collections The Riddle and Other Stories. Ding Dong Bell, Broomsticks and Other Tales. The Connoisseur and Other Stories. On the Edge. The Lord Fish. The Dutch Cheese and Irene Hawkins. The Walter de la Mare Omnibus. The Wind Blows Over. The Nap and Other Stories. Stories, essays and poems. The Best Stories of Walter de la Mare, Collected Stories for Children in Robin Jack. A Beginning and Other Stories. Eight Tales. Walter de la Mare. Short stories 1895 to 1926. Walter de la Mare. Short stories 1927 to 1956. And Walter de la Mare. Short stories for children. Poetry collection. Songs of Childhood. The Listeners. Peacock Pie. The Sunken Garden and Other Poems. The Marionettes, The Veil and Other Poems, Down a Down Derry, A Book of Fairy Poems, Stuff and Nonsense and so on, Bells and Grass, Time Passes and Other Poems, O Lovely England, Walter de la Mare, The Complete Poems, ed. Giles de la Mare, Plays Crossings, a fairy play. Non-fiction. Some women novelists of the 70s, Desert Islands and Robinson Crusoe. The early novels of Wilkie Collins. Anthologies edited. Come Hither. Early One Morning in the Spring. Chapters on children and on childhood as it is revealed in particular in early memories and in early writings. Behold, the Streamer. If Reverie, Night, Sleep, Dream, Love, Dreams, Nightmare, Death, the Unconscious, the Imagination, Divination, the Artist, and kindred subjects. Love.